Have you ever wondered, why do some people feel at peace in their old age, while others live in loneliness and self-doubt? For many, aging is not just about retirement, grown-up children, or changing health. It also comes with waves of unnamed emotions, the feeling of no longer being heard, of no longer belonging, or the quiet fear of becoming a burden to others. The issue isn't just about age, it lies in this. If we don't recognize and confront these emotional challenges, we can easily fall into depression, lose our sense of direction, or even begin to doubt our own worth. You are not alone, and there are practical ways to understand and overcome these challenges. Today's video will walk you through 7 common emotional struggles that many older adults face, from a lack of empathy and value conflicts to the fear of disappointing others. More importantly, we'll explore how to overcome each one with understanding and compassion for ourselves. If you find this topic meaningful, please hit like or share it with someone close. Perhaps someone out there needs to hear this message. You're also welcome to leave a comment. What worries you most when thinking about growing older? Now let's embark on this journey together, uncovering emotional shadows and learning how to live fully, no matter your age. It seems that the older we get, the more we realize talking is not the same as communicating. There have been countless times when you felt misunderstood or that the other person was only listening, just to wait for their turn to argue back. Generational gaps make the way we choose words and express thoughts vastly different from the younger generation, and this unintentionally creates a crack in the connection. Have you ever been in a situation where you shared something heartfelt, but your children or grandchildren responded as if you were criticizing or lecturing them? Or the reverse, they said something seemingly simple, but it felt hurtful to you? No one is wrong. It's just that our ways of communicating are no longer on the same frequency. Why does this happen? First, we need to understand that each generation is born into a completely different social context. Older adults tend to value order, clarity, and life experience. Meanwhile, younger generations lean towards speed, flexibility, and expressive freedom. The way we express ourselves, even in tone and pace of speech, is different. When these two linguistic worlds collide without empathy, misunderstanding is inevitable. But here's the good news. Communication is a skill that can be improved at any age. We don't have to change who we are, just how we express ourselves. Instead of rushing to explain or argue, learn to pause and truly listen. When we listen without trying to fix the other person, we're offering them the greatest gift, understanding. Try simple questions like, "What were you thinking when you said that?" Or, "This is how I understood it. Was that right?" These questions open up space for both sides to truly see each other, rather than just debating to win. Also, don't hesitate to share your emotions sincerely. If you feel hurt, say something like, "I feel sad because I think I'm no longer respected like before." Statements like this don't assign blame. They simply open a door for deeper understanding. Another key element, learn to observe body language. Sometimes loved ones say nothing, but a frown or a glance can carry plenty of signals. With patience, our sensitivity sharpens, allowing us to communicate more gracefully without saying much at all. The important thing is not to let silence stretch into a rift. Don't wait for others to change first. We can be the ones to take the first step, not because we're weak, but because we are strong and mature enough to love consciously. Imagine what would happen if every conversation began with listening, continued with empathy, and ended with true connection. Misunderstandings would gradually fade away, replaced by trust, the foundation of every lasting relationship. And if there's one takeaway from this piece, let it be this. Communication is not just a skill, it's the art of the heart. A heart that knows how to listen, how to step into another's shoes, and understands that every word, even if said casually, has the power to connect or to wound. Choose a connection, because you deserve to be understood, and so do your loved ones. You're not the only one who feels like you're living in a different world from your children and grandchildren. Many older adults are experiencing the same thing. When the values you hold dear, such as patience, dedication, or loyalty, are no longer appreciated by the younger generation as they once were, it's hard not to feel disheartened. Stories like, "How did our grandparents live back then and still find happiness?" are now seen as outdated. And that might make you wonder, am I becoming a stranger in my own family? Generational tension doesn't stem solely from age differences. It runs deeper, rooted in differing values. Older adults tend to value stability and structure. Younger generations pursue change, creativity, and individual expression. When these two sets of values collide without a bridge between them, conflict arises. The important thing to understand is this: these conflicts aren't about right or wrong. They come from different perspectives on life, on what is appropriate or not. Instead of trying to force agreement at all costs, you can share the story behind your beliefs. For example, rather than saying, "We never demanded things like that back in our day," try telling a story of how you overcame hardship in your youth and why that experience shaped your appreciation for frugality or responsibility. When you speak not to preach, but to recount a lived journey, people are more open to listening. You don't need to change your values. Just express them in a more heartfelt and connected way. Acceptance doesn't mean agreement. It's simply the first step toward understanding. When you accept that your grandchildren grew up in a different world, facing different pressures and opportunities, you stop seeing them as wrong and start seeing them as just different. Just as your parents may have struggled to understand you in the past, you now find yourself in their shoes. And this acceptance, far from creating distance, can be the bridge that brings you closer. You don't need to educate the younger generation. Start by asking questions. For instance, what gives your life meaning? Or, if your grandparents could relive their youth today, what do you think they would do differently? Questions like these show you care, and they open the door to real conversations, where you don't need to be right, and they don't need to prove anything, but everyone can share and learn from one another. After all, values and beliefs aren't set in stone. They are flowing currents, with each generation adding new perspectives. Instead of trying to preserve everything as it was, you can be the keeper of the source while also passing on the spirit of those values with flexibility and empathy. And above all, remember this: respect doesn't come from proving you're right. It comes from having the courage to live true to your values while also making room for others to do the same. There is a very particular kind of loneliness that many older adults experience. It's when you still live among family, surrounded by loved ones, yet feel as though no one truly understands you. You speak, but no one truly listens. You feel sad, but others think you're being too sensitive. The lack of empathy, especially from the younger generation, can sometimes make you feel invisible. However, empathy doesn't happen automatically. It needs to be nurtured. And sometimes it's we, the elders, who need to take the initiative to spark that connection. Don't expect others to understand you if you haven't shown them how you feel. That doesn't mean complaining or blaming, but rather having the courage to share honestly, "I feel sad when it seems like you no longer want to hear my stories," or "I feel like I'm no longer important at the dinner table." When you share your emotions, you open a door. But when you remain silent, others have no way of stepping into your inner world. And surprisingly, many young people, when given the chance, are quite willing to listen, even grateful for the opportunity to better understand their loved ones. Still, not everyone has the capacity or the willingness to empathize. Some people, no matter how much effort you make, will continue to choose indifference, detachment, or worse, emotional coldness. In those cases, it's important to learn how to set boundaries. Not everyone deserves your emotional energy. Save your heart and your time for relationships that listen and respond, whether they are friends your age, community groups, or people you meet on new journeys. Empathy is not the exclusive trait of the young. It is a life skill, and you can absolutely be the one to plant the seeds of that skill in others through your own kindness and steadiness. Sometimes just a knowing glance, a nod at the right moment, or a gentle question is enough to create a deep sense of connection. And above all, always remember this: you don't have to change who you are just to be accepted. You deserve relationships where you can simply be yourself without having to carry burdens or over-explain. That is where true empathy begins, when you are seen, heard, and loved simply for being you. There's something few people talk about, yet it quietly unfolds in the lives of many older adults: competition. not just in the workplace, but within families, among friends, or during community gatherings. The sense of being compared or judged based on success, children, finances, still lingers beneath the surface. You may not care who's wealthier, younger, or more adored by their children. But when you hear someone say, "My daughter's a doctor in New York," or "My husband is still strong, walking 10 kilometers every morning," something inside you stirs. It's not that you want to compete, but rather a quiet feeling of being compared, and a fear that you're not good enough. In truth, no one wants to be seen as competitive, but society has silently planted an invisible ruler in our minds, one where personal worth is often equated with success, youthfulness, and popularity. And the older we get, as those standards become harder to reach, feelings of inadequacy and comparison creep in more easily. But here's the good news. You can choose to see things differently. Instead of viewing those around you as silent rivals, see them as mirrors reflecting parts of yourself. Not to judge, but to better understand what truly matters to you. Others may seem to have a more beautiful life on social media, but you may have a warm family dinner every week. You may not have the same energy as before, but you carry a peace and wisdom that few possess. Everyone walks a different journey, and true happiness doesn't come from where you are. It comes from whether you've made peace with where you stand. So instead of competing, choose to support. When you see someone doing well, praise them. When you feel like you're falling behind, ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Am I measuring myself against someone else's standards? And when the answer comes, you may realize, competition only exists when your heart isn't yet at peace. Finally, build yourself a small community, one where you can share without needing to impress, where you are heard without having to win. Relationships like these not only bring happiness, but also serve as an antidote to the quiet comparison and inner competition that wear us down each day. You don't need to be a better version of someone else. You only need to be the most peaceful version of yourself. And if someone else chooses to compete, let them go. You've chosen a different path, one of understanding, support, and living true to your own values. Have you ever felt like you're living a script written by someone else? That at a certain age, you're supposed to act a certain way, supposed to dress a certain way, supposed to give up certain dreams just because they're no longer appropriate? These societal expectations, though rarely spoken aloud, always linger quietly in the background, and sometimes they make you forget who you truly are. It's not easy to confront that. You want to take up painting, but someone says, "You're too old for art now." You want to travel solo, but people ask, "Wouldn't staying home with your grandkids be more fun?" These seemingly caring comments are, in fact, subtle barriers that cause many older adults to give up their desire to live authentically. But if you look closely, you'll notice something interesting. The happiest people aren't the ones who best meet society's expectations. They're the ones who dare to step outside of them. They don't let stereotypes decide how they live. They don't let others define their worth. They choose their own path, even if it means walking it alone. Instead of trying to please everyone, ask yourself, what truly gives my life meaning? Maybe it's writing your memoir, learning to dance, starting a YouTube channel to tell your stories, or simply spending time with people you genuinely want to be around. What matters is that you have the freedom to choose, and that choice comes from you, not from the invisible pressure of the outside world. Allow yourself to be different. Allow yourself to pursue your passions, no matter how small. You don't need anyone's approval to dream, and you certainly don't need permission to live true to yourself, because you've already spent enough years carrying the weight of responsibility for your family, for society. Now is the time to live for you. If someone disagrees, just smile. They are only projecting their own fears, but you are walking a path many only dream of, but never dare to try. A path of freedom, self-direction, and inspiration. Don't let age be your excuse to delay. Let it be your reason to begin. Begin living more truthfully, more boldly, and more radiantly than ever before. There is a kind of pain that no one sees, yet it leaves a deep mark in the hearts of older adults. The feeling of being disregarded. No longer being asked for your opinion in family decisions. No one is truly listening when you share your experiences. No words of thanks for the quiet contributions you continue to make. The lack of recognition, whether at home or in society, leaves you wondering, do I still matter? That feeling doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps in during family dinners, in every moment you're interrupted, in the distracted eyes that wander as you speak. And over time, you begin to fall silent, not because you have nothing to say, but because your words no longer seem to carry weight. But the truth is, your value has never disappeared. It has only been temporarily overshadowed by the busyness, thoughtlessness, or lack of listening skills from those around you. Don't let that define you. You are still the one who has weathered life's ups and downs, who has held the family together, who holds wisdom no book could ever teach. And if no one acknowledges that, then begin by acknowledging it yourself. Self-recognition is not arrogance. It is self-respect. Start by writing down the things you've achieved, the challenges you've overcome. Look back at your own journey and say, I am proud of how I've lived. When you believe in your own worth, you no longer depend on external validation. And strangely enough, it's often in that moment that genuine recognition finds you. Share your feelings with your loved ones, sincerely and without blame. Say that you feel hurt when your input is no longer sought, that you need to feel heard. Sometimes a single heartfelt conversation is enough to shift the entire atmosphere in a family. More importantly, seek out places where you are truly valued. Small communities, like-minded friends, or even volunteer groups. Places where your life experiences are not dismissed, but welcomed as a gift. No one can take away your value unless you choose to step away from your role. Don't do that. Be present, speak up, and continue to live with all the wisdom, kindness, and strength you've built over a lifetime. You don't need anyone's permission to know that you matter, because you always have. There's a deeply ingrained habit in many older adults, the constant need to please everyone. From staying silent to avoid arguments, to taking care of grandchildren even when the body is tired, or always saying, I'm fine despite being hurt inside, all out of fear of being seen as selfish, bothersome, or no longer useful. But living like this for too long makes you gradually forget your own true needs. You smile to keep others happy, you give in to keep the peace, you sacrifice to maintain harmony. But after each time, a part of you feels a little smaller. And one day you suddenly realize you've been living according to others' expectations for so long that you lost yourself without even noticing. What's most important is this: no one forced you to do it. They're used to being accommodated because you've always done so. They don't listen to your feelings because you never express them. And they keep expecting unreasonable things, simply because you've never said enough. But you absolutely have the right to live differently. You don't need to exhaust yourself trying to be pleasant in everyone's eyes, because that's a race with no finish line. Start by prioritizing your own happiness, not selfishly, but consciously. When you care for yourself well, only then can you give to others in a healthy and willing way. Set boundaries. Say no when needed. Rest when you're tired. Speak up when you're hurt. That's not being difficult. That's self-respect. You don't need a valid reason to rest or to enjoy life. The simple fact that you want to is enough. At the same time, live according to your own values. If you believe in kindness, keep being kind, but not to earn approval, but because that's how you choose to live. If you love peace and quiet, return to it, not to avoid others, but to nourish your soul. And then you'll see. When you live authentically, people around you start to change. They learn to respect you more. They realize you have boundaries, and that makes them admire you, not pull away. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be yourself, clear, courageous, and loving enough to say no when needed, and say yes to yourself. Life doesn't require you to please everyone. It simply invites you to live true to your heart. And you, at this stage in life, deserve to live lightly, freely, and joyfully, not as someone trying to please the world, but as a whole, worthy human being, living your one and only life. Thank you for taking the time to walk with me through today's reflection. Your presence here, quietly listening, thoughtfully contemplating each word, is something truly beautiful. And I know it's not easy. Facing the emotional challenges of aging though often silent, requires immense courage. Together, we've explored 7 deeply personal struggles, from feeling misunderstood, lacking empathy, to the pressure of always being composed and pleasing everyone. But beyond all those moments of sadness lies a powerful truth. You are not alone, and you can live differently, freer, more peacefully, and more in tune with your true values. I'd like to invite you to share something. Among those 7 challenges, which one resonated with you the most? Or if you're going through something that hasn't yet found words, feel free to leave a few lines from your heart, not to complain, but to recognize, heal, and grow together. If you found this content helpful, don't hesitate to share it with friends or loved ones, those who may also be navigating this emotional journey. Who knows? A few words you send today may become the encouragement someone else is quietly searching for. I also look forward to having you with me in future videos, where we'll continue to speak about things that are often hidden but profoundly real, where you'll always be reminded you matter and you are always worthy of a full and meaningful life. You know, living true to yourself at any age is an act of great bravery, but it's also the most beautiful journey of all. Take one small step at a time, but take it with intention. Dare to say no to what drains you and say yes to yourself, even if it's just a quiet cup of tea on a late afternoon, because it's never too late to begin living a life that is whole and joyful. And this very moment is the perfect time to begin.